right, good morning and welcome to the agenda on Dominion Brokers Group, where we delve into critical national issues. Well, I am Chike Ubogu. All right, today we'll be discussing a topic that continues to shape Nigeria's socio-economic and socio-political landscape. And that's ethnic nationalism and national unity. Right, but before then, let's take a trip through the trending news in Nigeria today. Well, the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, JAMB, has fixed 150 as the minimum cutoff mark for admissions into Nigerian universities for the 2025-2026 academic session. The decision was reached on Tuesday during the 2025 policy meeting on admissions held at the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center in Abuja with stakeholders from various tertiary institutions in attendance. According to JAMB, 140 was approved as a minimum score for colleges of nursing sciences, 100 for polytechnics, 100 for colleges of education, and 140 for all new colleges rising sciences by the stakeholders, heads of tertiary institutions. Right, JAMB announced via its official X account. Well, joining me this morning to do justice to this and so many other topics this morning is Charles Anjorin Dolapo. It's good to have you this morning, Dolapo.
Good morning, Mr. Chike. So delighted to be here this morning.
All right, a quick one. JAMB pegging the score to 150 as the minimum cutoff right now. When you look at it, it goes. It means whoever writes JAMB will have to score less than 50 before on each subject before you get admission. So that is below standard, below pass. Where are we delving to in the education sector?
You see, this is not an inclusiveness. It is a response to educational survival. Because when you look at some of these schools, you notice that market forces is what is at play, and quality is being satisfied, on the altar of good and excellent education. This is a consensus between JAMB and tertiary institutions. And when you look at the whole perspective, because it is very, very clear, our tertiary institutions, they need students. They want students to fill these classrooms so that the more students are in the classrooms, you have more subventions, from the government. So fewer students in the classroom, equals to, lack of attention from the state and federal government. It means that there will be less funding. Then it also means that there will be downsizing. So when you look at this, when you look at it from this perspective, you find out that quality education is being subverted, in favor of quantity, just because you want to fill the quota and the classrooms, with specific numbers of students. Then you also have this perception with JAMB also. JAMB is being perceived as, because they are the gatekeepers, they are the gatekeeper of education. They are being perceived as, are you a quota system institution, or you are in alliance with, political elite. Then you look at the cutoff, 150. That is barely 37.5, of 400. So when you look at our counterpart in other African countries, you compare their rating system, or now their own students, get into tertiary, you find out that Nigeria is actually declining. Take as an instance, in Ghana, you must get minimum C6 and, writing their own national exam to get into the tertiary institution. At least you must score above 50%.
So basically, if you score 37.5 over 100.
Over 100, yes.
Then you're qualified
to pass a course. So that's an absurdity as far as I'm concerned.
Don't you see this as an erosion of academic standard?
Yeah, it is an erosion of our academic standard because it shows that basic education, primary school and secondary school, they are already, struggling.
All right, let's move on to this. Well, still on that same issue with JAMB, the federal government has formally set 16 years as the minimum age for admission into Nigeria's tertiary institutions. Well, Minister of Education Dr. Tunji Alausa announced this during the 2025 policy meeting of the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board held in Abuja. Alausa, while declaring the meeting open, emphasized that the age benchmark is now official and non-negotiable. He warned that any admission carried out outside the central admissions processing system will be considered illegal. He explained that the decision was guided by the need to strike a balance between academic readiness and cognitive maturity. 16 years getting into the tertiary institution. Well, no doubt. I know we have some geniuses, we have special kids. However, don't you think 16 is too young? Some will say, because some have posited that 16 years is too young to getting into the tertiary institution based on maturity.
You see, academic brilliance without emotional readiness, is a recipe for burnout. Research has shown that the neurological, the psychological, and the emotional intelligence of a young child grows late into their teenage years. So it means that their executive functioning, is not yet matured. How do you have a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old within the walls of our tertiary institution? How would they cope with the rigor, of identity? They may be brilliant on paper, but the maturity is not there to handle, specific life rigors, because life is going to throw curveballs at them. How do they handle it? So it is not all about academic brilliance. No, I think I'm a little bit in support with this policy. Even though 16, I'm still a little bit like, okay, it is still too young to enter in the institution of four walls of our higher learning. So I think if I would propose, I would want to say probably 17, because 16 is too young for me. So you also have our political wealthy elites, who always want to, quickly push their words, to write WAEC, matriculation examination. They see it as competition. Yes, that is good. If you are brilliant, yes, write those exams. But what we need is, a better citizens. Yes, because we need to churn out, above all, we need to churn out better citizens. Even though you might be a better graduate, you must be able to churn out better citizens that are employable. So we need to get the system right. For example, if you look at the UK, the age is 18. You look at countries like Germany, 18. You look like countries like developed countries. You find out that most of these countries has 18 as their official age. So why is Nigeria different? Why are we different? So furthermore, you also look at it from this perspective again. This policy, I'm sure, will bring equity to education, in the terms of, as long as you want your children to, to actually school here in Nigeria. Because formally it leaves behind people in poor rural society.
So where does the 633 system come into play? 6 years in the primary school, 3 years in the junior secondary school, 3 years in the senior secondary school. That's about 12 years.
Yes.
So apparently when a kid is born, 12 years plus 4 means the kid gets into primary 1 at the age of 4. That's what it means.
Yeah, you see, back in the olden days, I understood, or let me say, I met a theory, a story that before you can actually enter the basic school,
Your hand must touch
you know, your hand must be able to touch your hair.
I also passed through that when I did
Exactly.
this.
Unfortunately, I didn't pass through that when I wanted to enter, you know, basic school. So you find out that children of nowadays, age 3, 4, is already in primary 2. I'm like, what? This young chap. As a matter of fact, while I was growing up, I think I was in nursery 2. You know, I got promoted to primary 1. My dad did not allow me go to primary 1 because he felt I was too young to be in primary 1. I repeated nursery 2, not because I was not brilliant, but because he felt I was too young for that class. It happened twice. I had a double promotion in primary 4 to go to primary 5. My dad refused, said I was too young. All my mates, when they were in primary 5, entered into the GSS class. When it was time for me to, you know, write common entrance, I didn't write common entrance in primary 5. I wrote common entrance in primary 6. My dad made sure of that I should be matured before taking certain steps in life. So when you look at the maturity of students in the institutions of our higher learning today, you find out that you see a small girl, 100 level, 13-year-old, and the way they carry themselves, you know that these people cannot actually handle life. They should still be under their parents, you know, suckling.
You know, the tertiary institution is supposed to be where you pass through and it passes through you.
Yes.
But most times, people just pass through school.
The school doesn't pass through them.
That is it, you know. Well, federal government has pegged it at 16 years. And then the minimum score is 150. Well, moving on to the major topic for today. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, is a diverse country with over 250 ethnic groups. While this diversity is a strength, it has also fueled tensions, competing identities, and debates over unity. How do we balance ethnic pride with national cohesion? Are we truly one Nigeria? Or are ethnic loyalties pulling us apart? Dolapo, this is a question that I keep asking every time. Are we truly one Nigeria? Or we see ethnic nationalities, you know, trying to pull us apart as a people?
You see, one Nigeria is actually a myth.
A myth?
Yes.
But we're under the umbrella.
Yeah, we're under the umbrella. Unfortunately, the umbrella we all are under, you know, was created by the constructs of our colonial masters. You know, what they did was, you know, drew a geographical line, all in the name of wanting to, you know, rule, let me say, subvert or subject a continent or a society, put them under subjugation to, you know, rule them. And before we know what was happening, there was northern and southern amalgamation. You know, they ruled by indirect rule in the north. You know, in the south, especially in the east, they made sure that there was no centralized system. You know, in the west, they used the Obas, you know, to rule. They didn't ask the Igbos. They didn't ask the Ibibios. They didn't ask the Jukuns. They didn't ask the Nupes. They didn't ask the Yorubas, the Hausas. Do you guys want to live as one, or you want to live as separate entities? They just gummed everybody together, and we found ourselves where we are today.
People with diverse culture.
Diverse cultures.
Diverse traditions.
Diverse traditions with diverse language. Mind you, there is no issue or any problem with having diverse language, diverse culture, you know, having diversity in various forms. But the problem we have had is because leadership has failed us. When leadership failed us, it is natural for every human being under this umbrella to retreat back to their ethnic shell and trust their own culture, trust their own language. So one Nigeria is actually a myth. It is. So it is the construct of the colonial masters is very, very unfortunate, and we have been living under this shadow for a very, very, very long time.
Should that be an excuse, a perpetual excuse for our failure? Should that be a perpetual excuse for not getting it right since independence?
You see, it shouldn't be a perpetual excuse, you know, for not getting it right since independence. Of course, there are so many political postulations, there are so many political theories that, you know, can help solve this problem of ethno-religious identity that has often plagued us as a nation. But unfortunately, what our leaders inherited, you know, is like it has been wired into our DNA, you know, not to be able to come out of the shadows of our colonial masters. It is still with us till today. When you fast forward to when we started having proper political awareness, when we started having this political consciousness, you find out that the colonial masters, you know, they gave power, enormous power to the less educated North, while the highly developed South, you know, was given education, was developed, and they made sure that they concentrated enormous power in the North. Already there is an imbalance, and that is what the political champions of that era grew up to meet. So it has been very, very difficult for most especially political power blocks in the North to relinquish that power.
Okay.
So you can see the cycle. They know that our region is not that developed, is not that educated, you know, than other regions in the South.
You know, you've been talking about colonialism, you've been talking about power block,
Yes.
you've been talking about ethnic division. However, we'll still discuss that again. Before going to the present situation now,
Okay.
let's look at the past, where Nigeria's colonial history presumably or arguably laid the foundation of ethnic divisions,
Yes.
as the case may be. That's why I said arguably. Now, how did the British amalgamation of 1914 shape ethnic relations in the country?
Okay, I think I will still have to pick it from where I started because it's in relation to this question.
Yes.
You see, when the British first came to Nigeria, they came because of economic trade, and to be able to, you know, subjugate Nigeria, you know, under one entity, you know, they had to create the indirect rule. Don't forget that they've replicated this system of governments, you know, in India, because India also was a multi-ethnic society.
Yeah.
So indirect rule, you know, succeeded in India. So they felt that, okay, if this system of government can work in India, then it can also work in Nigeria. But when they came around, they saw that the North had a large expanse of land. You know, they saw a well structured, organized group of people. So they felt that, okay, we will use the traditional rulers, you know, to...
As in the Southwest?
No.
In the West?
In the North.
Okay.
You know, we use the traditional ruler in the North, you know, to get what we want. So in the South, they found out that, okay, it is a complex system. For example, in the East, the Igbos, they, they were operating a system that was likened to a Republican system.
Yeah.
Where they had the age grade system, and different titles, Ozo and Ozo titles, and and all that. So they felt that okay, direct rule would not be able to work in this system. So they left the region with no central system. So they came to the west here, where we had the Oyo Empire. That was the most prevalent and, let me say, the oldest empire, mostly maybe on the continent of Africa, one of, let me put it that way. And they felt like, okay, we are going to use the indirect rule to achieve our aim. So it was majorly because of trade. So they used the leverage on the wealth of the South. They built the South. They developed the South. They gave them education. And they intentionally deprived the North of the same growth and of the same thing. So this is a way of how the colonial masters was able to was able to plant the seed of mistrust, the seed of ethnic clash between the North and the South. So that's to answer the question that you posed.
All right. Well, if you say that, then let's fast forward to post-independence, where the First Republic collapsed due to ethnic rivalries, and that's what led to the Civil War.
Yes.
But when you think about it, did the war really resolve these tensions, or did it deepen it the more?
The war did not solve the tension. Rather it deepened it. It was buried, beneath the thin line of our fault. It was buried between our fault lines. So it never, ever, 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 solved the tensions. During the First Republic, don't forget that before then, each region was developing at its own pace. And when you look at the political parties that was formed back then, most of these parties were not formed with ideology in mind. It was formed with ethnic identity in mind. You have the NPC, I think. You have the NCNC. You have the Action Group. Now, 1960, when the Union Jack flag, was lowered down, and we hoisted our own green, white, green flag to show that, okay, yes, we are now fully independent.
That was 1963, when Nigeria became a republic.
No, I'm not talking about the republic. I'm talking 1960 when we get independence.
Yeah, the Union Jack was still placed vis-a-vis the national flag. But in 1963, when we became a republic, the Union Jack was lowered. That's the Republican Constitution.
Republican Constitution, yeah. But I
think
think
that led to the regionalization of the country, as it were.
Yes, but notwithstanding, the Union Jack was still lowered in 1960 to give way for our own independence. Because if you are still hoisting the flag of the British, then where is the sign of freedom? So there was no sign of freedom if you are still hoisting the Union Jack. So the green, white, green, came into the Nigerian flag came into being in 1960. But there was an election that took place whereby the NCNC needed to form an alliance, a coalition, with the MPC, because they were the one that had more seats in the parliament.
The MPC is the Northern People's Congress.
Yeah. Yes. So you have the Action Group, You know,
the NCNC, for the sake of our viewers, it should know that the NCNC is the National Congress of Nigeria and the Cameroons.
Yes. You know, the Action Group, I wanted to say Action Congress, the AG, Action Group, you know, of Obafemi Awolowo, you know, they went solo to play the opposition party. That is to show you the ethnic fault lines. That is to show you that the parties that were available at that period of time, you know, did not exist based on any ideology as a central thing. It exists because of ethnic identities. So when you are in MPC, you know that, of course, this is a northern party, it's a northern agenda. If you are in NCNC, you know that, oh, this is an southern agenda, southeast agenda. If you are in the Action Group, this is a Yoruba agenda. So it was not until late 50s when these popular figures, people like Obafemi Awolowo, began to, you know, introduce ideals into the political parties.
Remember, we're still talking about the Civil War of 1970.
Yes, exactly.
Has it, did it reshape our national identity, or did it deepen it?
Yes, I was trying to, I'm trying to come from this perspective, you know, to come later to that. You know, they started introducing ideologies. That's when Awolowo introduced free education, because Awolowo believed in socialist democracy. He introduced it into Action Group. So now, fast forward to 1967, when we had the Civil War. But what led to the Civil War? What led to the Civil War was because of, number one, remember that we had census crisis. We had election crisis that threw the southern hemisphere into a Philistine state. And major political figures were arrested. Awolowo was arrested and was incarcerated. It is in the midst of all of this that we had military incursion for the very first time into our politics. 1966, we had Nzeogwu.
The coup that was led by Chukwuma Kaduna
Nzeogwu, yes. He claimed the life of the Premier of the North.
Yes.
He claimed the life of prominent northern military era. A name that comes to mind is Mai Malari.
Mai
Malari.
Yeah.
You know. Now, when you trace...
But they were not the only ones that were affected.
Exactly.
In the West.
In the West. Adekunle Fajuyi later died.
Yeah, in the West.
After the counter coup. Ladoke Akintola. Yes. Ladoke Akintola lost his life in the midst of this.
In the East. Michael Okpara died too.
Michael Okpara died.
Yes.
Yes. So now, when you trace all these historical narratives,
it still boils around ethnic rivalry.
Ethnic rivalries.
Yeah.
Now we had a counter coup that happened on July 15.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken with that date.
July 15.
The counter coup.
Yes.
You know, where Aguiyi Ironsi was killed here in Ibadan.
In Ibadan, here.
Adekunle Fajuyi was killed here in Ibadan.
As the governor of Western Region.
Western Region. The coup, as a matter of fact, started at Abeokuta garrison here. Now, when you look at this historical pattern, Ironsi died.
In Ibadan.
In Ibadan. Yakubu Gowon came on board. But before Yakubu Gowon came on board, Nigeria was on the brink of disintegration because the late Muritala Muhammad, as at that period in time, said it is either the North goes on his way or I think he was trying to install. Okay, yes, the civilians as at that time favored Ogundipe as the most senior military officer.
Yeah.
To take over power. But Muritala Muhammad was adamant. He said, if Yakubu Gowon or a
northern junior officer,
yes,
a lieutenant colonel,
will not ascend to power, then the North, will go on its way. This is still to tell you that the fault lines, the ethnic fault lines, the regional fault lines, was still very much imminent.
Yeah.
Now, Gowon came on board. When Gowon came on board, Ojukwu in the East rejected the candidacy of Gowon because he felt
he saw Gowon as a junior officer to
himself.
Yes.
And he felt that he was not the most senior officer to take over. And that led to silence bickering within that period of time. In the North, they began to kill Southeasterners.
Easterners.
Yeah. Yes, they began to kill Southeasterners. Ojukwu was not happy. That was what led
and
to
their bodies were dumped at the Oji train station.
Yes, Oji train. Yeah, that was what actually started the aggravated the civil war.
Yeah.
So now you have Ojukwu on one side, you have Yakubu Gowon on one side. Remember the Aburi Accord. I think it was lately that Yakubu Gowon said he was feeling sleepy when he first of all agreed to the Aburi Accord.
As a military
officer in 1967 and head of state. Okay. But fast forward to the Civil War era, Nigeria fought a deadly civil war. Hunger and starvation was used as a tool. Millions lost their lives, but at the end of the day, they declared no victor, no vanquished. The truth of the matter is, was there a victor? Was there a vanquished?
People were killed.
Over
2 million people were killed.
Yes.
Massacre.
Was there a national reconciliation process to heal the wounds? Remember that when we came out of this war, Igbos lost their investments. They were given, I think, 20 pounds
each. Even if you had 5 billion
naira,
you'll be given 20
pounds. They started to rebuild.
With 20 pounds.
You see, do not let us deceive ourselves. The fault lines, was never repaired.
Okay, now let's move on to today. How is the ethnic nationalism manifesting? From IPOB in the southeast to Yoruba nation agitators. Are these movements about self-determination or secession, vis-a-vis marginalization, economic disparity, and even political exclusion?
You see, it will always manifest its ugly head. It is an hydra-headed monster that has been confronting us, and we have not been able to decapitate the head. Up to now, I think the closest that the Southeast as a region has gotten close to power, aside from Nnamdi Azikiwe, that was ceremonial head of state, was
Alex Ekwueme as
vice president in 1979.
Yeah.
And from 1979 up till now.
Maybe Chuba Okadigbo as Senate president.
Yes, Chuba Okadigbo as Senate president. 1979 up to this moment, the Southeastern as a region, is yet, to even move closer to Aso Rock, not to talk of, occupying Aso Rock. When you look at our democracy between 1999 and 2025 right now, you can see that the presidency has been a basketball between the Southwest and the Northwest. Obasanjo Southwest, Yar'Adua came into power, Northwest. The only reason why a region can breach that was because Yar'Adua died in power. That was why you had President Goodluck Jonathan from South-South. But when power left South-South, it went back to the Northwest. From Northwest, it came back to the Southwest. Right now, regions are positioning for the powers again. Southeast is left outside of the equation.
Still living that scar.
Still living that scar.
Okay.
Now, 3 to 4 electoral cycles have proved that you do not need Southeast in the calculation of winning an election.
But they are Nigerians.
They are Nigerians in this dispensation. You know, I don't want to go deeper into politics because this will be a deviation from what we are actually discussing.
Even the North, some argue the Arewas are also, their stand is also a form of ethnic nationalization.
Yes, that is true. You know, to circle back to where we are coming from, I said all those things for us to understand why we are having different groups springing up all in the name of marginalization. You have IPOB, you have Yoruba Nation. This is not the first time that they are springing up. Even during the primordial times of 1950s, we had secessionist agitation in the Niger Delta region. I'm trying to remember the name of the arrowhead of that secessionist movement back then. You also have secessionist agitation that led to the creation of the Midwestern region also, because they felt that they are being marginalized. But right now, the marginalization still exists in terms of politics. And don't forget also that it was the Civil War that gave back to the federal character, that gave back to the quota system. So as to, it was like a bandage, you know, on bullet wounds. And that wound has not healed, even up till now.
So because of our time.
So now,
because
you raised the Arewa question.
Yes.
Yeah. The people in the North, excuse me, they believe what they have is power. And they are using it to their massive advantage. Okay. And don't also forget, the North is also divided into 3 regions. You can say that, okay, there is one North, basically. But don't forget that people from the Northeast, you know, feels marginalization. People from the North Central also feel marginalized. So there is no South, you know.
Of course, there can never be an utopian system.
Of course,
there's no perfect system. And there's no egalitarian society.
Egalitarian society.
So some would be there and some would be, that's like the animal farm. Some are more equal than
the other.
Yes.
George Orwell.
Yeah. So with these divisions, is Nigeria's unity negotiable? Some say restructuring is the answer. What's your take on this?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I think if we go full restructuring, I think it will help a bit, because it will help states create their own unique identity. Every state will develop at their own pace. When you look at the late, we've been talking about the historical patterns also. You have the groundnut pyramid in the north. You have the palm oil in the southeast, eastern region. You have the cocoa rubber in the west. So cocoa house is still standing tall till today. And I'm not sure there's any edifice, you know, that has been built, you know, over time.
Maybe very soon, petrol house will be built very soon, or crude house.
Anyway, that was on the lighter, note.
Yeah.
So every region grew at their own pace. I think in 1954, that was when we first of all attempted independence, but it was shut down in the parliament, you know, because the North said they were not ready for independence as at that time, because they were still growing at their own pace, but the South has actually, you know, grown faster than the North. So if we can have something that resembles the 1963 Constitution, that, you know, gave us a real federal structure, not a quasi-federal system, at the moment. I think that will go a long way because, of course, we are operating federalism at the moment, but we are not operating true federalism.
Well,
take as an instance.
When you say federalism and true federalism, there's just one concept of federalism.
There's one concept
in governance.
In governance.
So when true federalism comes, maybe that's the Nigerian lexicon. Political lexicon.
It's not Nigeria.
Many people have argued that what we have today, the states are federating units.
Yes.
However, when you look at it, are these states independent for you to call them a federating unit?
See, that's why I said if we try to operate a true federal system of government, you know, it will go a long way to assuage and to bring reconciliation. But first of all, I think something germane needs to be done.
Okay.
And it has to be what Rwanda did after 1993, their nasty civil war. There was a national reconciliation. I think that for us, for the ethnic tension to heal, most especially, the Southeast needs to be placated. They need to be placated. We don't need a leader that will come and mark election results like examination scripts, like the way the former president did, President Muhammadu Buhari, that said 97%, 5%. We don't need that sort of leader. We need proper national reconciliation, and integrate marginalized tribes, marginalized regions.
We celebrate ethnic diversity by fostering unity, especially when the Super Eagles play.
Yes,
everybody is
of course.
Nigeria.
That is to show you. That is to show you that we can form an identity with that. The NSAS protest, you know, also brought that to light, that we can actually live as one, because that movement was meant for a purpose.
There was no Igbo, there was no
Hausas, there was no. Everybody came out as one to fight a common enemy.
So, lastly, is there hope? Is there hope? Can Nigeria overcome these divisions?
Yes, Nigeria can overcome this division. There is always hope in any situation. Not all situations are hopeless. So there is hope.
All right. Before we go, Nigeria's diversity is its strength. If managed wisely, the choice is ours. Will we let ethnic nationalism divide us? Or will we build a nation where every group thrives? Thank you, Darapa and Jorin, for featuring on the agenda this morning.
It's my pleasure, Mr. Chike.
All right, let's keep this conversation going. Do follow us on all our social media platforms on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It's at Dominion Broadcast. And on the app X, it is at Dominion Cast. You can visit our website at www.dominion.org.ng. My name is Chike Ubogu. Stay informed, stay engaged, and let's stay united. Best wishes.